Good morning, friends. Today we will continue our discussion on the book Professional Ethics and Civic Morals. I had already covered 24 points from this book, and today we'll start from point 25th. Durkheimian view of society, ethics, morality, professions in industrial democratic societies and business ethics and political society was a product of the political crises of French society in the 19th century, and it was also a product of the intellectual debates that emerged from these crises. What I'm trying to say is that these 24 points which Emile Durkheim was sharing with his readers and listeners was a product not of armchair philosophy or a product of philosophical introspection or reflection in a closed room or in a solitary place. Rather, these 24 points emerged from the historicity of Durkheim's own biography in a turbulent time during which he was born, brought up, educated, or trained. And during the same turbulent time, he was writing, teaching, and researching. Therefore, although Durkheim wanted to separate sociology as a discipline from psychology, biology, and philosophy, but Durkheim did not say that sociology should be sharply or radically separated from history. Although Durkheim is not regarded as a person who contributed enormously in historical sociology, but at least these lectures remind us that Durkheim himself, as well as his sociology, was very much product of the historical turbulence which was going on in France since the beginning of the French Revolution in 1789 till the beginning of the First World War in 1914. In 1915, the only child of Durkheim, André, was killed during the First World War in December 1915, and it resulted in great personal trauma in the life of Durkheim, and this was not only a personal loss, it was also a loss of faith in the legacy of European Enlightenment of 18th century, which had began in France itself. Therefore, these lectures become very important because the last series of lectures were delivered during 2 years, 1914 and 1915. And as you know, in 1914, the First World War began, and it ended only in 1919. But in between, in December 1915, Emile Durkheim lost his only child during the war. His son was killed, and he was so shocked that he could not survive longer, and he died in 1917. Therefore, it is noteworthy that even during the war, Durkheim was not a pessimistic person like Max Weber, nor was he an advocate of armed struggle for a radical reform, which is represented by the work of Karl Marx. He remained an optimistic person until his last breath, and he had some sort of detached contemplation on the affairs of war and peace between 1789 till his death in 1917. It is also noteworthy that he gave 18 lectures. Now, this number 18 is very interesting. Durkheim is perhaps the only European scholar after 16th century who was fascinated by number 18. Otherwise, Raymond Aron gave 16 lectures on industrial society. André Bette wrote 6 essays in comparative sociology. But Durkheim gave 18 lectures on professional ethics and civic morals. Those who are born and brought up in India, they know that 18 is a very important number in Indic civilization. There are 18 chapters in Bhagavad Gita. There are 18 Mahapuranas. There are 18, days of Navratra. Therefore, whether you like it or not, but Durkheimian sociology, like Comtean sociology, is not radically separated from the European Jewish mysticism and theology or occult writing as well. Durkheim was definitely not atheist like Karl Marx. He was definitely not agnostic like most other Jewish intellectuals of his time. But I will not say that he was an orthodox believer in Judaism, but like Benjamin Franklin, the noted critical theorists, Marxist students and teachers are proud of, there is an occultic dimension, there is a theological dimension in the majority of Jewish thinkers of our time, modern time, whether it is Albert Einstein or it is Emile Durkheim or Marshall Moss or Claude Lévi-Strauss or Walter Benjamin. You will find that they are not only situating human beings and human society in the world of Newtonian universe. Rather, they are trying to touch upon the territory which is called cosmic today. Therefore, Durkheimian sociology situates human beings and humans in a cosmic order, but he uses the term moral consensus every time. Durkheim always said from 1893 till his death that without moral consensus, human enterprise as a species being is not possible at all. Therefore, let us see how Durkheim has elaborated his points in this book, and how, as a faithful student of Durkheim's work, we can make sense of this book. Of course, reading this book together with the other books of Durkheim side by side. Now let me come to the point 25th, that his sociology was very much the product of French history and European history, mediated by the French history. And unless and until we are ready to contextualize the writings of Emile Durkheim in the particular history of France and the broader history of Europe, at least since 18th century, some of the finer points I have underlined so far will be missed by you. Therefore, please pay attention to the points 26th. Durkheim's sociology was directed towards discovering and understanding the conditions that can create and sustain social solidarity in societies undergoing rapid social change or revolution or revolutionary political upheavals. Point 27. Within Europe, France went through a period of exceptional political instability and radical changes during 18th to 20th centuries. Point 28. We can only appreciate Durkheim's focus on social solidarity and civil society or moral consensus against a background of political instability and military conflicts since 1789, revolutionary movement through Napoleon's military adventure from 1799 to 1815 to the First World War 1914 to 1919. His first series of lectures were given during 1898-99. The second series were given during 1904 and 5. The third series were given during 1910 and 11, and the last series were given during the First World War itself in 1914, 1915. Now, these dates are very meaningful for students who are born and brought up in India. But let me come first to 2-3 points, and then I will come back to this Indian connection with the dates. Point 29. During 1789 and 1915, France experienced a number of revolutionary events that divided the country between the church and political conservatism on the one hand, and the bourgeoisie and emerging liberalism on the other. The final destruction of the ancient regime and the descent of the French Revolution into terror produced a strong conservative reaction not only in France but also in different parts of Europe, primarily those countries which had separated themselves from the Catholic Church in Italy and claimed to be secular or Protestant. Point 30. Edmund Burke's B-U-R-K-E. Edmund Burke's Reflections on the Revolution in France, published in November 1790, was an important influence on Emile Durkheim's sociological imaginations in general, and the lectures included in this book, Professional Ethics and Civic Morals in particular. Durkheim was particularly impressed by Edmund Burke's criticism of the abstract notion of the rights of man propounded by Voltaire and other ideologues of French Revolution. Number 31. For Edmund Burke, the traditional rights of English men under the common law provided more security than the abstract ideas of the revolution in France. Hence, Edmund Burke hoped or advocated for a peaceful transition of power comparable to the English Revolution of 1688. Now, if you remember, in my earlier lectures in January, among other things, I had also referred to the glorious revolution of 1688 with the American War of Independence and the French Revolution. Now, Edmund Burke is referring to this glorious revolution of 1688 and English Revolution of 1688. Now, why it is called glorious revolution? Because without shedding a single drop of blood, the people of United Kingdom or Great Britain were able to transform their legal system in such a way that they had the first constitutional monarchy in Europe during the modern times. Of course, constitutional monarchy was a qualitatively revolutionary act in the history of Europe. It was definitely different from the ancient regime represented by the Holy Roman Empire between 4th century AD till the end of 15th century AD, where Pope was both the sacred as well as the temporal head of the Holy Roman Empire. It was also different from the French Revolution and the revolutionary France, the leadership of Napoleon. It was also different from the German unification under Bismarck, where different German speaking ethnic groups and smaller states were united under the visionary leadership of Bismarck, of course within the overall rulership of Kaiser William. Therefore, Edmund Burke was advocating that some sort of reformed version of glorious revolution of 1688 was a better avenue, a better model of historical development in the modern world in 18th century. He was writing it in 1790 November. And Durkheim was influenced and impressed by this reflection on the French Revolution by Edmund Burke. I have not seen anybody who had studied Durkheim's work linking him with Edmund Burke. Mostly people call Durkheim as a disciple of Auguste Comte, and they say that Montesquieu and Tocqueville exerted some academic influence in the writings and lectures of Emile Durkheim. But I do feel reading line by line or by doing my textual analysis of this book, which was given in the form of lectures, that the ideas of Emile Durkheim were definitely influenced by Edmund Burke. I am not denying that he was influenced by other people as well. For example, Montesquieu, for example, Auguste Comte, for example, Saint Simo or Saint Simon. People pronounce his name differently. Or even by Tocqueville. Tocqueville's work, Democracy in America, was a very influential French book. Durkheim had not only read but also was influenced by some of the insights which Tocqueville, Montesquieu, Auguste Comte, and Simo provided. But Edmund Burke was also an important influence. Now, let me say very, very categorically that if Marx was born in Germany like Jombart or Hegel, but he was influenced by the Scottish political economy of United Kingdom, primarily the Scottish political economists like Adam Smith, David Hume, and Ricardo in the same way, Max Weber was influenced by the American philosophers of British origin, Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Paine. I have discussed about, Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Paine in my lectures in March. In the same way, Emile Durkheim was influenced by the political understanding and historical insights of British visionary Edmund Burke. What I am trying to underline is that there is no doubt that before the First World War, England was the most dominant economic and military power. Of course, after the defeat of Napoleon in Waterloo, if French people dominated the world from 1789 till 1815, it can be said, categorically that the British people were able to influence the world much more decisively after the defeat of Napoleon in 1815 till the First World War began in 1914. As a result, all the three sociological thinkers we are reading in this semester, Karl Marx, Max Weber, and Emile Durkheim, they were reading the discourses of English intellectuals. Their preference may be different, but it cannot be denied that all the three, two of them were Germans, Karl Marx and Max Weber, and and Emile Durkheim was a French. Two of them were Jewish intellectuals by birth, namely Emile Durkheim, namely Karl Marx and Emile Durkheim. And there may be difference of religiosity between Marx and Durkheim. In my view, Marx was definitely a spiritual person. Otherwise, he would not have imagined the third stage of socialism, where there will be no state, no private property, no marriage, no family. This is a replica of the Garden of Eden in the Old Testament. I dare say that, Marx only transformed Garden of Eden as the last stage or the third stage or the final stage of human development, that is the last stage of socialism. In other words, if Catholic thinkers were trying to, create a Christian heaven on earth, Karl Marx and Emile Durkheim were also trying to create. I will give them benefit of doubt. Some were conscious what they are doing, some were subconscious, some were unconscious, but all people of Jewish origin, they were creative minority, people at margin in European society. And when majoritarian rule takes the fundamentalist form, uh, there is so much anxiety in the minds of the intellectuals belonging to minority community. Same way, the Jewish intellectuals were also facing the turmoil in their life, in their families, in their community called kibbutz or commune, and they were trying to make a secular version or modern version or the socialist version or the Marxist version of Garden of Eden on earth. Therefore, every intellectual was taking inspiration or making a serious dialogue with the intellectuals of United Kingdom, which was the most dominant force which represented the ruling elite of the global village between 1815 and 1914. And as I said, Marx was influenced by the Scottish political economists like Adam Smith, David Hume, and David Ricardo. Max Weber was influenced by American philosophers of British origin, Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Paine, and Emile Durkheim was influenced by the political understanding and historical insights of British visionary Edmund Burke. Now let us come to point 32. I was trying to say that after French Revolution, its impact was felt at multi-dimensional level, not only in France but also in Europe, and it created a deep fissure or antagonism or disharmony between two groups. One was the Catholic group and the other was the anti-Catholic group. But usually academicians do not write it as antagonism between Catholics and anti-Catholics. Academically, they say that it was antagonism between anti-Catholic, that is, in academic language, secular, anti-clerical, Protestant, republicanism, and second, political and social conservatism that defined French politics dominated by the Catholic Church for the next 2 centuries, 19th and 20th century. Durkheim's own life has been full of tragedy. Durkheim was born in 1858. The first year of direct rule of the British Crown over India until 1857. From 1757 until 1857, India was ruled by the British East India Company, and it was competing with the French East India Company, both in Eastern India and Southern India. And in Western India, the East India Company was competing with the Portuguese East India Company, and then there was a Portuguese rule in Western India. Therefore, Durkheim was born in 1858. The year first war of Indian independence was ruthlessly suppressed by the British Army. This is what I was trying to say when I was trying to say that these lectures in particular and Durkheim's writing in general have deep connection with Indian history. Durkheim was born when British Crown suppressed the first war of Indian independence by employing large military apparatus, and they ruthlessly killed Indians. They showed their ugly face until 1857. They were claiming that they are on a civilizing mission in India, but when the first war of Indian independence began and they were defeated throughout 1857 and early parts of 1858, they showed their most ugly, savage, barbarous face. In the same way, when Durkheim gave his lectures, something was happening in India as well. For example, when he gave his second series of lectures, Yeah. Now, what is happening that Indians are ruthlessly suppressed by the regular British Army in 1858 in India, and that year Durkheim is also born in France. And then Durkheim is giving his first series of lectures between 1898 and 99. This is the time Congress established by A.O. Hume was dominated by Indians of Zoroastrian origin, Dada Sahab Nauroji. And then he gives his second series of lectures in 1904 and 5. This is the time Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, and Lala Lajpat Rai are dominating the affairs of the Indian National Congress and the Freedom Movement of India, the second Freedom Movement of India, which began under the banner of Congress established by an Englishman, David Hume. Therefore, the first series of lectures, correspond with the dominance of Dada Sahab Nauroji, and the second series of lectures, coincide with the emergence of Bal Gangadhar Tilak as the greatest ideologue of Indian independence movement. During 1910 and 11, the British, shifted their capital they decided to shift their capital in 1911 from Calcutta or Kolkata today to Delhi or New Delhi today. And then during 1914 and 15, Durkheim gives the fourth series of lectures, and this is the time of First World War. This is the time that Gandhi is at the margin of the Congress movement. It is still dominated by Bal Gangadhar Tilak and his disciples like B.S. Munje, Dr. Hedgewar, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was a great devotee or supporter or disciple of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. And Gandhi was, in the other group, which was against this group of Tilak Maharaj. And that group was led by a contemporary of Tilak, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who brought in Mahatma Gandhi. Therefore, this is the time, where Indian sociology is also emerging. During, 1904, 5 and 6, Bengal Renaissance or Swadeshi movement in Bengal is crystallizing, and sooner after, by 1908, Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee The then Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University introduces sociology in Calcutta University, and then in 1919 in Bombay, the British government introduced another version of sociology. I would like to say that Indian sociology was much more original and creative from 1908 till the end of the Second World War, that is around 1950. Then, after 1950, or roughly, 49 or 40, Second World War began in 1913 and ended in 1945. After 1945, there is erosion of originality in the sociological discourse in India. Let us come to the point I was talking about, about Imam Durkheim, that Imam Durkheim was born in 1858, and it was the defeat of France in Franco-Prussian. There is a country called Prussia or Prussia, which has been, integrated in Germany. It was Franco-German War, but then it was known as Franco-Prussian War of 1870. That had the most profound consequences for Durkheim and the development of sociology in French universities. Point 33. The military defeat of 1870 was followed by the Paris Commune of 1871. It demonstrated that there was a huge antagonism in France, primarily in the rural areas where the Catholic and conservative population lived, and the urban areas, particularly the large cities like Paris, Lyon, and Marseille. Republicans and radical Protestant working class, dominated. Therefore, France was divided into rural France and urban France. In rural France, which had more population, the people were attached with the Catholic Church and they had, conservative attitude. Whereas in urban France, particularly the metropolitan France, in larger cities like Paris, Lyon, and Marseille, the Republican and radical Protestant working class was dominant. The Commune, the Paris Commune of 1971 was, a revolutionary act of capture by the militant radical working class. It was some sort of a communist takeover of France in 1871, only in one city. The Commune was a radical socialist and revolutionary government that controlled Paris, the capital city of France, from late March to late May 1871. The radicals were mostly Protestant Calvinists, whereas the leadership was provided by agnostic Jewish minority belonging to the merchant class of Germany. The revolutionary Paris Commune of 1871 was eventually put down by the regular French army in what came to be known as the Bloody Week of May 1871.34. Durkheim came to the conclusion that the only effective response to military defeat of 1870 and national humiliation of both 1870 and 1871. As I said, the leadership of Paris Commune of 1871 came from the agnostic Jews of mercantile class from Germany. Therefore, it was a continuation by other means of the same war, Franco-Prussian War of 1870, and Durkheim is saying, Durkheim is concluding that the only effective response to military defeat and national humiliation was to improve the French educational system. According to Durkheim, these military disasters resulted, in a very humiliating situation, which illustrated the weakness of France in relationship to the technological and scientific superiority of Bismarck's Germany over Napoleonic France. Here I end my lecture on professional ethics and civic morals. Now the course is complete. Thank you very much, friends, and good wishes for the end semester exams.